What allowance? The $2,000 a month my mom secretly sent to my golden child sister. At family dinner, my father leaned across the table with that clinical ease he carries from the hospital. Between bites of chicken wings, he asked Logan, "Is the allowance enough?" I blinked. The fork in my hand paused midair. What allowance? His face went white, the kind of pale you only see on patients who've just heard bad news. I'll never forget the silence that followed. My mother's spoon clinked against her bowl. My sister Olivia, thousands of miles away in Paris, wasn't there to watch the truth unravel. But her presence was thick in the room anyway. Her name, her shadow, her endless stream of Instagram posts that looked like billboards for a life I didn't have. My name is Logan. I'm 19, a first-year med student in New York City. My parents live in Dallas. My father is a surgeon, respected, relentless man who leaves the house before dawn and sometimes doesn't come home at all. My mother doesn't work outside the home. She manages everything else, finances, schedules, the quiet power of deciding what's fair. 4 months ago, I moved into a small apartment in New York with walls so thin I can hear my neighbor's alarm at 6 a.m. My parents cover tuition, but everything else, rent, food, subway passes, textbooks, the little costs that bleed you dry, that's on me. It hasn't been the college experience I dreamed about. Instead of joining clubs or study groups, I juggle 3 jobs. Tutoring during the week event, staffing on weekends, bar shifts at night. Sometimes I close the bar at 2 a.m. and drag myself to anatomy lecture at 8. My notes shaky with fatigue. I told myself it was temporary, that I could handle it. But truth, I was already cracking. Meanwhile, Olivia's life glittered from a continent away. She's 2 years older, studying fashion design in Paris. My golden sister. Mom's words, not mine. The one who needed support, who was special, who deserved indulgence. Scrolling through her feed was like pressing on a bruise. Rooftop parties with the Eiffel Tower glowing in the background. Brunches in Monaco. Dresses tagged Dior, Chanel, names I didn't even know how to pronounce. Hashtags like blessed and fashion life. And always a caption, Mom knows exactly what I need. Mom always knew what Olivia needed. For me, there were no hashtags. Just cheap ramen, bruised bananas, and nights where the choice was between a textbook and a shift at the bar. I'd asked for help once. Called Mom after rent nearly drained my account, my voice shaking. She sighed through the phone. "Logan, we're stretched thin already. Paying your tuition is hard enough. You'll just have to be responsible." So I worked harder. I told myself responsibility was survival. That exhaustion was normal. That being invisible was safer than asking twice. But now, sitting at this table, Dad's question cracked something open. His pale face, his confusion, it was real. He wasn't pretending. He thought I'd been getting money. $2,000 a month, as I would later learn. He thought Mom had been transferring it quietly, supporting me while he worked himself raw at the hospital. But my stomach told the truth before my words did. It had been empty for months. Ask yourself, what would you have said, sitting at that table when you realized the ground beneath your life wasn't solid, but a trick floor? Would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace, or let the silence split wide open? That was the night everything started to unravel. New York was supposed to be a fresh start, but for me, it became a grindstone. Most mornings, I woke up in a haze. The radiator in my apartment clanked like it was mocking me, and I dragged myself out of bed to face another day that felt like it already owed me something. Classes in the morning, tutoring in the afternoon bar, shifts at night. On weekends, I signed up for event staffing jobs, banquets, conferences, weddings, places where people tossed away leftovers worth more than my weekly grocery budget. I ate what I could afford. Instant noodles when they were on sale, day-old bread from the corner deli, bulk packs of discount rice. Sometimes I'd splurge on a bruised apple, just to remember what fresh fruit tasted like. The cafeteria at school charged $5 for a meal I couldn't justify, not when $5 could stretch into 3 days of ramen if I rationed carefully. My body began to show the cracks. In class, my eyelids grew heavier every day. I'd catch myself scribbling notes I couldn't read later because the pen trailed off mid-sentence. My classmates asked if I was okay. I laughed it off, just tired, just working a lot. But a lot didn't cover it. It was survival disguised as responsibility. Meanwhile, Olivia's world sparkled through my phone screen. She didn't just live in Paris, she floated above it. Her Instagram was a curated museum of luxury. Rooftop parties overlooking the Eiffel Tower. Weekend trips to Monaco. A Milan getaway just because. Designer bags in colors I couldn't name. Mom always knows exactly what I need, her captions read, dripping with hashtags. I told myself not to compare, but comparison is automatic when you're eating cup noodles while your sister eats macarons at La Durée. One post in particular nearly broke me. Olivia posed at a party in a Dior dress, the Eiffel Tower glowing behind her, like a prop made just for her. Her smile was radiant, her glass of champagne tilted just right for the camera. The caption read, "Mom is the best. She knows I need to look the part. Hashtag Paris nights. Hashtag fashion life." I stared at that photo until my hands shook. My stomach was empty, and I had just biked home in the rain to avoid the subway fare. That dress probably cost more than my rent. Mom once told me Olivia's future depends on appearances. Yours depends on hard work. At the time, I thought it was just another one of her sayings, like a mantra she repeated without thinking. But here in my tiny apartment, those words echoed like a curse. There's a particular loneliness that comes from being overlooked, from realizing your sacrifices aren't noble, they're invisible. Nobody claps for you when you make ends meet by skipping meals. Nobody celebrates the grades you managed to scrape together on no sleep. You just keep going because stopping means collapse. A friend of mine noticed. He texted late one night after class. Are you okay? You always look tired? Like not just tired, something else. I didn't know what to say. So I told him what I told everyone. I've got stamina, I'll manage. Let's hang out when things calm down. But things never calm down. The shifts got longer, the nights shorter, and every dollar I earned seemed to evaporate. And still I kept scrolling through Olivia's feed, pressing on the bruise. It happened on a Friday night at the bar. The place was packed wall-to-wall noise music, thumping in my chest like a second heartbeat. I balanced a tray of cocktails, 6 martinis, 3 shots of gin and tonic, and I told myself just one more round, just one more hour. Rent was due in a week, but halfway across the floor, the room tilted. My knees buckled. The tray slipped and glasses shattered across the floor like gunfire. I remember reaching for the edge of the counter trying to steady myself, but the world spun away. The next thing I knew, I was lying in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm. The fluorescent lights burned. My throat felt dry like I hadn't had water in days. A doctor, tired but kind, leaned over me. You collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition, he said. You need to slow down. Slow down, I thought. How do you slow down when survival depends on speed? My boss came by. His face looked graver than I'd ever seen it. Logan, you scared us. You wouldn't wake up at first, so we called an ambulance. He sighed. I need you to rest. Take the rest of the month off. Don't worry about your job. You'll have it when you're ready. Rest sounded like luxury, but all I heard was no shifts, no income. My stomach twisted. On the subway home, my phone buzzed with a message from a friend. You okay? You didn't answer my calls. I typed back with shaky fingers, collapsed. Hospital, exhaustion. Minutes later, he was at my apartment door, arms full of groceries. Spaghetti, vegetables, even fresh bread. He cooked in my tiny kitchen, humming softly, filling the silence I didn't know I'd been drowning in. We sat down to eat, the first real meal I'd had in weeks. I twirled pasta around my fork, embarrassed at how quickly I devoured it. He asked, why are you pushing yourself like this? Doesn't your family help? I shook my head. They pay tuition. That's it. Mom says they can't afford more. His brow furrowed. But your dad's a surgeon, right? And your sister, she's studying fashion in Paris. How is she affording that? If money's so tight, the fork froze in my hand. I'd never asked. I just accepted Mom's word. Special arrangements she always said about Olivia. But now in the quiet of my apartment, the question gnawed at me. My friend leaned closer. Logan, something doesn't add up. Don't you think I went to bed with that sentence echoing in my mind? Something doesn't add up. The thought clawed at me for days. Something doesn't add up. My friend was right. I couldn't shake the image of Olivia in her Dior dress, champagne glass in hand, while I counted quarters at the laundromat. So I did something I almost never did. I called her. When she picked up, her voice was surprised, almost suspicious. Logan, wow, you never call. What's up? I forced casual. Just checking in? How's Paris? Oh, amazing as always. I could hear the smile in her voice. Mom just sent me the cutest Chanel bag for my birthday next month. She always knows what I need. My stomach dropped. A Chanel bag. My mom had told me they had no money to spare yet. Here was Olivia bragging about luxury gifts. That's nice, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, I was wondering, how do you manage over there? Paris must be crazy expensive. She laughed, carefree like money was air. Oh, I don't worry about that stuff. Mom transfers me about $3,000 a month for living expenses. Plus extra whenever I need something special. Events, new collections, you know how it is. She gets it. $3,000 a month. The room seemed to close in. I was staring at a wall that suddenly felt too close, too tight. Wow, I muttered. Because what else could I say? We hung up soon after, and I sat there, phone heavy in my hand. $3,000 a month for Olivia. 0 for me. I thought back to the times I'd called Mom, voice shaking, begging for just a little help to cover groceries, and she told me, Logan, we can't afford more. You'll just have to be responsible. Responsible. That word twisted now, cruel and sharp. Responsible meant starving while my sister drank champagne under the Paris lights. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the call, Olivia's careless laugh, her pride in the Chanel bag. And the numbers, they didn't lie. Something wasn't just off. Something was being hidden. The holidays were coming, and for once I felt like going home wasn't about tradition. It was about answers. I bought the cheapest flight I could find one night and one day in Dallas. I told myself it was to see my family, but deep down I knew I was going to confront the truth. When I walked through the front door, Dad's eyes widened. Logan, you've lost weight. His voice cracked with concern. I shrugged uneasy under his gaze. Mom stayed quiet, setting down a bowl of salad like nothing was wrong. We sat for lunch. Chicken wing soup, the kind of meal I hadn't tasted in months. Dad studied me, frown deepening. You look thinner. Are you eating properly? I forced a laugh. Not really. This is the best meal I've had in a while. His brow furrowed. What do you usually eat? Instant noodles. Discount bread. I paused, embarrassed. Sometimes nothing. Dad blinked. What about cafeteria food? Too expensive, I said. He leaned forward, confusion etched on his face. Is the money I've been sending enough for you? The fork slipped in my hand. My stomach nodded. What money, I asked? That was the moment his face drained of color. The air seemed to freeze after my words. What money? Dad's jaw tightened. The $2,000 I've been sending every month. Haven't you been getting it? My chest constricted. No, I haven't received a single dollar. His head snapped toward Mom. Paisley, have you been transferring the money like we agreed? His voice was sharp, surgical, the way I imagined he spoke when an operation took a wrong turn. Mom's spoon stilled over her soup. She wouldn't meet his eyes. For a second, I thought she might laugh it off, say it was a misunderstanding, but the silence stretched heavier than anything she could say. Dad's tone dropped dangerous now. Answer me. Have you been sending Logan his allowance? Her lips parted, but no words came. She stared down at her bowl like it could shield her. My mind spiraled. All those nights, I'd skipped meals. All the extra shifts that left me trembling. The collapse at the bar. And all this time, Dad thought I had support. Mom let me starve while pretending it wasn't her choice. Finally, she whispered no. The sound was so soft, I almost missed it. Dad pushed back from the table, his chair scraping hard against the floor. No, what do you mean no? She lifted her chin slightly, a flicker of defiance. There were other expenses, priorities. My throat went dry. Olivia. It wasn't a question. Mom's silence was the answer. I felt the world tilt, like I was back on that bar floor tray, crashing down. Except this time, it wasn't exhaustion. It was betrayal. Dad's voice broke through harsh and incredulous. So you let our son struggle to the point of collapse while you funneled his allowance to Olivia. Don't twist this. Mom snapped, her voice suddenly sharp. Olivia needed the support. Fashion in Paris is cutthroat. Appearances matter. Logan is strong. He's practical. He doesn't need it like she does. I could barely breathe. All my life, favoritism had been a quiet undercurrent, subtle, deniable. But hearing her say it outright, that Olivia's needs mattered more than my survival. It was like a knife pressed against my ribs. Dad slammed his palm on the table, the dishes rattling. He's studying medicine. He collapsed from exhaustion because you left him with nothing. And you think she needed it more. Mom flinched, but didn't back down. He's like you. He'll be fine. Olivia's different. Her words burned. Different. Special. Golden. Ask yourself, what would you do if your own mother sat across the table and admitted she chose one child's luxury over another's survival? Would you scream? Would you walk out? Or would you sit there staring at the ruins of trust, wondering if you ever truly mattered at all? Dad's face turned a shade I'd never seen before, somewhere between fury and heartbreak. His voice trembled, not with weakness, but with restraint. Paisley, do you hear yourself? You've been sending thousands to Olivia while Logan starved. He collapsed. He could have died. Mom's eyes flicked toward me, then hardened. Don't exaggerate. He's resilient. He's always been resilient. Olivia is fragile. She needs nurturing. The words slammed into me. Fragile. Needs nurturing. As if I were made of stone, built to endure neglect. Dad stood abruptly, pointing a finger at her. Enough. Tell me the truth. How much have you been sending her? Her silence stretched again, the kind that told me the number wasn't small. Finally, she muttered, 3,000. Every month. Sometimes more if she needed clothes, events, connections. Dad's hand curled into a fist at his side. So 5,000-6,000 a month to Olivia. And nothing. Nothing to Logan. I could barely hear them over the pounding in my ears. $6,000. That was more than my entire year's living expenses. While I dug coins from couch cushions to buy instant noodles, Olivia was sipping cocktails in silk dresses. I forced my voice to steady. Mom, I called you. I begged for help. Even $50 would have made a difference. And you told me you couldn't. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Because you didn't need it. You've always managed. You're like your father's strong independent. Olivia isn't like that. She's special. She's destined for more. Destined for more. The phrase slashed across me like a blade. Dad turned to me, his eyes raw with guilt. Logan, I swear I thought you were getting your allowance. I know, I said quickly though, the words felt like shards in my throat. I know you didn't know, but the damage was done. I thought of my sister's smile on Instagram, of her Chanel bag glinting under Paris lights. And I thought of my own reflection in a cracked bathroom mirror. Hollow eyes, ribs sharp under my skin. The contrast wasn't just unfair, it was cruel. Dad's voice cut through steel now. This stops. Right now. From this day forward, I'll handle the finances myself. Logan will get what's his directly. No more diversions. And Olivia. He exhaled, shaking his head. Olivia will have to learn reality. Mom's face twisted. You can't do that. She'll suffer. Dad's eyes blazed. And what do you think Logan has been doing all this time? Thriving. The room fell into silence, heavy with truths that had been buried for years. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about love. And the terrifying question clawed at my chest. Had my mother ever really loved me the same way she loved Olivia? That night, I lay in my old bed staring at the ceiling where glow-in-the-dark stars still clung from when I was 12. But instead of comfort, I felt a weight crushing my chest. Every memory replayed in a new sickening light. Olivia getting a brand new car at 16, while I was told to save up like a man. Her artwork framed in the hallway, my academic medals shoved into a drawer. The summer I wanted science camp, but was told it was too expensive, only to find out later, Olivia was sent to Italy for an art program. Back then, I convinced myself it was circumstance. That Mom's choices weren't favoritism, just different priorities. But tonight, she said it plainly. She believed Olivia was special, fragile, destined. And me, I was the workhorse, built to carry the weight invisible unless I collapsed under it. Downstairs, their voices rose again. Dad, you lied to me. For years, Mom, I protected Olivia. You'll never understand the fashion world. Dad, this isn't about fashion, it's about betrayal. Their words carried up the stairs like knives, each one slicing deeper. I pressed my palms against my ears, but I couldn't block out the truth. My family wasn't just fractured. It had always been fractured. I just hadn't seen where the cracks began. And in that darkness, a new thought coiled inside me. If my own mother saw me as less worthy of love, of care, of even basic survival, then who was I to her, a son, or just collateral in her mission to build her golden child? Ask yourself if you uncovered that the person meant to protect you had been the one starving you in silence. Would you still call them mother? Or would you admit the unthinkable, that maybe you were nothing more than the shadow child she never wanted to shine? The next morning, the tension in the house was thick enough to choke on. Mom moved around the kitchen in silence, her eyes red-rimmed but dry, like she'd decided to armor herself in coldness. Dad sat at the table, his coffee untouched, fingers drumming against the wood like he was counting down to an explosion. I sat between them, the unwilling witness, and I knew if I stayed quiet now, I'd carry this weight forever. So I asked softly, at first, Mom. Why? Her head snapped toward me, defensive already. Why did you choose Olivia over me? My voice shook. Why did you decide her survival mattered more than mine? For a moment, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. Then her expression hardened. Because you don't need me the way she does. You never did. You were strong from the beginning. Olivia. She's delicate. She needs support to thrive. You'll survive no matter what. She won't. I stared at her stunned. She said it like it was fact, not cruelty. Like starving your child was reasonable if you believed he could endure it. Dad's chair screeched as he stood. Do you hear yourself, Paisley? You're justifying neglect. You're justifying letting our son collapse while you bankroll luxury for your daughter. Mom folded her arms, voice sharp. Don't make it sound so black and white. Olivia's an investment. Logan will always land on his feet. But she needs to be lifted. My chest burned. An investment. Was that all family was to her? Stocks to be hedged, portfolios to be managed? Dad slammed his fist on the table. No, he is our son. And he deserved better. From both of us. His voice cracked at the end, raw with guilt. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom looked away, eyes glistening, but no apology came. Not to Dad, not to me. And in that silence, something in me broke. I realized there would be no confession, no sudden moment of clarity where she saw me as equal to Olivia. Her truth had already been spoken. I was strong so I could be neglected. Olivia was fragile so she deserved everything. That was the script she'd written for us long ago. But now for the first time, I wasn't willing to play my role. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt like a stranger's walls, too tight air, too heavy. Downstairs, I heard muffled arguing. Dad's voice low and furious, Mom's rising and falling like a storm. Words like betrayal, trust, divorce floated up through the vents. I lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing the family I thought I knew had been smoke and mirrors. In the morning, Dad knocked on my door. His face looked older, etched with exhaustion, but his eyes were steady. He sat on the edge of my bed and spoke quietly, almost like he was afraid the words would break me. Logan. I'm sorry, he said. I thought you were being taken care of. I trusted your mother and I shouldn't have. That ends now. From today forward, I'll send money directly to you. No middleman, no secrets. I wanted to thank him, but the words stuck in my throat. All I managed was a nod. He hesitated, then added, There's more. Your mother. She's been diverting money from the family trust too. Money that was supposed to be split evenly between you and Olivia when you turned 25. She's been moving it into a separate account for Olivia. My heart stopped. How much? His jaw clenched. Around 300,000 so far. The number hit me like a physical blow. 300,000. Years of sacrifice stolen in silence. Dad's voice shook with restrained fury. I've frozen the account. I'll do whatever it takes to restore the funds. But I want you to know I won't let her rob you anymore. I sat there in stunned silence, my whole body trembling. 300,000? Instant noodles. Collapsing at work. Olivia's Chanel bag. I thought I'd already seen the worst of the betrayal. But this was a lifetime's worth of proof that I had never been her priority. Downstairs, I heard Mom's voice, sharp and accusing. Olivia's name came up again and again, like a spell she refused to stop casting. And in that moment, I knew our family wasn't just cracked. It was shattering each piece, cutting deeper the more I tried to hold on. Later that evening, Olivia called me. Her name lit up my phone, and for a second, I thought about letting it ring out. But curiosity won. The moment I answered, her voice was already sharp. What did you tell Dad? He just called me furious. He says my allowance is being cut to $1,000 a month. Do you know what that means for me? I clenched the phone tighter. Do you know what it's meant for me? I've been working 60-hour weeks on top of medical school. I collapsed at work, Liv. From exhaustion, from hunger, silence on the line, just her breath uneven. Then softer, I didn't know. The anger surged up hot and bitter. Would it have mattered if you did? Would you have stopped cashing the checks? Would you have told Mom to stop sending you thousands while I starved? She didn't answer. And in that silence, I got my answer. Finally, she whispered, What am I supposed to do now? 1,000 isn't enough to live in Paris. I can't get a job. I cut in, like I did. Like millions of people do. Welcome to the real world, Olivia. Her sharp inhale told me she wasn't used to hearing that. She hung up without another word. I set the phone down, my hands shaking, but not from weakness, from release. For once, I had said the thing I'd swallowed for years. Downstairs, I heard the front door slam. Dad's heavy footsteps on the stairs. He appeared in my doorway, his expression carved from stone. Logan, he said quietly. I've decided. I'm taking full control of the finances. And your mother? She and I are going to counseling. But I don't know if this marriage can be saved. My chest tightened. Even after everything, part of me still wanted to believe our family could be fixed. But as I looked at him, his weary eyes, his clenched jaw, I knew the truth. Some masks, once torn away, can't be put back on. The weeks after that holiday visit blurred into something unreal. Back in New York, my life shifted almost overnight. Dad made good on his word. $2,000 landed directly in my account. No detours, no excuses. For the first time in months, I bought real groceries. Fresh fruit, vegetables, meat. Things that felt like luxuries, but were in truth just necessities I'd been denied. Cooking a proper meal in my tiny apartment felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Each bite reminded me survival shouldn't have been this hard. But while my world steadied, my families fell apart. Dad called often. His voice was tired, but resolute. He said he'd confronted Mom about the diverted trust funds, about the lies that stacked up like a tower ready to collapse. She didn't deny it. She only justified it, circling back to the same refrain: Olivia was special, different, worth the sacrifice. Counseling began, but the sessions quickly turned into battlegrounds. Dad wanted transparency. Mom wanted excuses. He wanted fairness. She wanted loyalty to Olivia, not to the family as a whole. Meanwhile, Olivia's calls grew more frantic. The boutique stores in Paris didn't hand out charity, and she was suddenly face-to-face with bills she couldn't charm her way out of. She complained about being forced to take a part-time job. I almost laughed at the irony. She called it humiliating. I called it reality. And through all of this, one question haunted me. Was this fracture always inevitable, or did it take the mask of favoritism finally cracking for us to see the truth? The divide wasn't just financial. It was emotional, moral, almost spiritual. Mom on one side, clutching her golden child like a shield. Dad on the other, angry, guilty, but finally awake. Olivia stumbling somewhere in between, stripped of her safety net. And me no longer invisible, but marked by scars that would never fade. Ask yourself, if the only way for the truth to surface was for your family to break apart, would you still want it? By spring, the cracks in my family were no longer cracks. They were canyons. Dad moved into a small apartment across town, saying he needed space to think. Mom called it abandonment. I called it survival. Olivia adjusted faster than anyone expected. At first, she raged, claiming she'd drop out of fashion school if the money didn't return. But when the reality sank in that no one was coming to save her, she found work at a boutique. It's humiliating, she told me during one late-night call. Yet weeks later, her tone shifted. Actually, my boss says I have an eye for business. He's teaching me things I'd never learn in class. There was a pride in her voice I'd never heard before. Mom, though, was unraveling. She couldn't accept the new balance of power. When Dad froze the hidden account, she tried to secretly wire Olivia more cash from her personal savings. He caught her. That was the final straw. He filed for divorce. The proceedings were brutal. Courtrooms aren't built for family secrets, but ours spilled into every corner. The judge heard about the trust fund diversions, the hidden transfers, the deception. Mom tried to paint herself as a selfless mother who only wanted the best for her daughter. But numbers don't lie. Bank statements stacked higher than her excuses. In the end, the settlement favored Dad. He kept most of the assets. Mom was left with less than she imagined, forced into a life smaller than the one she'd curated. And me, I watched from the sidelines, my heart heavy, but not surprised. Because favoritism doesn't just wound children. It corrodes marriages. It poisons trust. The golden child shines, but the rest of the family burns in the shadow. The months that followed felt like walking through the ashes of a house fire. Everything looked familiar, but nothing was the same. Dad threw himself into being present. He called me every week without fail, asking about my classes, my health, my friends. At first, it felt strange, like he was overcompensating, but slowly it became natural. He was learning how to be a father in real time, and I was learning how to let him. With the allowance restored directly into my account, I could finally breathe. I cut back on bar shifts, kept just a few tutoring sessions, and reclaimed the one thing I'd been starved of: time. Time to sleep, time to study, time to live like a 19-year-old. My grades rebounded. I joined a pre-med association, made friends, even laughed again, without guilt tugging at me. Olivia surprised me most. Stripped of her endless safety net, she became, dare I say it, human. The boutique job humbled her, but it also sharpened her. She started designing with practicality, creating elegance out of affordable materials. She'd call me not to brag about Paris parties, but to ask about my classes, or to share a sketch she was proud of. For the first time, it felt like I had a sister, not a rival. Mom was the one who couldn't move on. Downsizing into a condo, she hated working part-time at a department store. After decades of being the queen of her castle, she blamed everyone but herself. Dad for leaving, me for exposing her, Olivia for betraying her once the money stopped. Our phone calls were brief, shallow. She clung to her version of reality, the one where she was the victim and we were ungrateful children. Sometimes I wanted to scream at her. Other times I just pitied her. Because favoritism had been her addiction, and now she was going through withdrawal. Ask yourself, how do you rebuild a family when the foundation was always crooked? Do you patch the cracks, or do you tear it down and start again? When the storm settled, what remained was quieter, but not less complicated. Dad kept his word. He became both protector and provider in a way I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Weekly calls, surprise visits to New York. Even small things like sending me grocery store gift cards when exams piled up. It felt like he was trying to build a bridge plank by plank, steady enough for me to cross without looking down at the years of absence below. Olivia, against all odds, changed too. At first, she cursed me, accused me of destroying her world. But when her allowance shrank and the designer bags stopped coming, she learned something about herself that she could stand on her own feet. The job at the boutique became more than a paycheck. It was a mirror forcing her to see what work meant. She started calling me not to brag about Parisian nights, but to vent about rude customers' deadlines or how she managed to craft a dress from scraps of fabric. Those calls, clumsy at first, grew into something I never thought possible, a sibling bond that wasn't poisoned by favoritism. Mom, she was the hardest part. Divorce papers stripped away the illusion of control she had always clung to. Downsizing from a spacious house to a cramped condo rattled her. But maybe it was the first time she truly felt what scarcity meant. For years, she had weaponized money, shaping love into a currency only Olivia could spend. Now, standing at a store counter as a part-time saleswoman, she was forced to experience the weight of each dollar she once tossed around so carelessly. Still, her pride didn't break easily. Conversations were clipped awkward. Sometimes she called me pretending everything was fine, then slipped in a bitter comment about how I'd turned Olivia against her. Other times, she cried quietly, admitting she didn't know who she was without the role of caretaker. Part of me wanted to scream that she'd never been a caretaker for me, only a gatekeeper. But another part, maybe the son still craving approval, just listened. The most surprising reconciliation came with Olivia. One late night, she whispered through the phone, "I never realized how much mom's favoritism hurt you. I thought being special was just normal. But I see it now. I'm sorry." I didn't forgive her instantly, but I felt something shift. A weight moved. Maybe not gone, but lighter. Ask yourself, how do you forgive a mother who starved one child's future to feed another's illusions? How do you look at the sister who benefited from your suffering and believe she didn't know? There isn't a clean answer. Forgiveness isn't a line you cross once. It's a circle you keep walking, hoping one day you'll meet yourself in the center. And maybe that's what healing is, not an ending, but the courage to keep walking the circle even when your legs shake. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. More full stories are coming soon. See you in the next one.